Well, hello, everyone. It's fantastic to have you joining us today. My name is Olga Ryans, a life coach and wellness coach with Dr. Aileen West, who is a remarkable physician. She is based in Washington, D.C. And the reason we are asking her to join this conversation is because we really, really want to have this month focused on all sorts of topics that are often remain in the shadow because we're too busy serving our children, helping other people, transforming the world, that we often don't recognize some very important things that happen within our body, that happens with us. And we want to have that conversation today to help us see how all those systems, what we call the BMW concept, the body, the mind, and how we interact with the world come together. So because these conversations are needed. We talked about leadership, we talked about parenting, we're talking about sex, we're talking about frustrations and boundaries and saying no and everything that we are, the marvelous, amazing goddesses of life and creation. And it's time that we stop being squeezed into boxes. They're just too small for our brilliance and boldness. And that's how we should be. It will be a very unique conversation. We also want to address some of the stigmas, some of the boxes that we deal with, but we try to either not bring this up to attention of ourselves even, or we really don't have the language to speak about this. So we want the space to be very free, very open, very safe. It's going to be an interactive conversation. Whatever you have a question, please post in the chat. With that, I would love us to talk to Dr. West. And Dr. West, her list is just so remarkable that it's hard to choose what to share with you. She is a person that I met in my personal wellness struggle or journey, whatever you want to call it. I have 5 children and it wrecks your body. And I really needed someone who could understand the concept of wellness. I wasn't sick, but I wanted to be well. I wanted to be energetic. I wanted to be high performer. I'm a high achiever. I have big dreams. And so I very carefully looked for a person who can give that concept of wellness and not just sickness, because sickness was not my problem. And that's when I came across Dr. West. Dr. West, maybe you can talk about briefly about your career, how you arrived to where you are right now and where you are with the clinic that you have right now. And then we're going to jump into this conversation.
Well, thank you, Olga. And it is such a pleasure to be here. I was really flattered when you invited me to participate, and I'm so glad to be able to help and to share some really good information with everybody today. So I'm a general internist. I've been in practice about 25 years, and my most recent journey has been, I opened up my own private practice about 2.5 years ago in order to be able to focus and concentrate on wellness and prevention in addition to addressing people's general primary care internal medicine needs. I've always had a soft spot for internal medicine, women's health, and throughout my career, which has mostly been in academic settings, I've been a medical director of internal medicine, women's health at a couple of different institutions. That's been a wonderful and adventurous journey, putting internal medicine, women's health on the map, and really continuing the conversation about how gender does influence health in so many different ways. So I love what I do. My practice is in Fairfax, Virginia, and it is just such a joy to be able to do it in a smaller setting where I have the opportunity to really get to know my patients and work with them long term. So,
well, thank you so much. So your approach to medicine is really coming from the place of wellness. It's a much bigger, much more holistic approach where it's not just the internal systems and organs, but it is also all sorts of other things that we don't recognize sometimes, even related to some decisions we made in our life. And as I understand, your primary focus is also a big deal of what you do is working with the menopause and getting close to that place, which we don't think much about, but this is like 10, 15 years of our life, at least that's the body experience. And so really we'll appreciate if we can jump into that conversation as well today. Awesome. So what I would like us to kind of do is move out, zoom out a little bit out, and see the bigger scope of all the relationships in our systems that we have. And then we're going to go zoom in deep in and see the details on the cellular level, if we want, of those things that we also don't usually know about or think about. And so it's going to be this ride of roller coaster of zooming in and out so we can see different perspectives, different lenses. And hopefully with that, we start getting different questions that we ask ourselves and people who are responsible for our wellness and health. So what I would like us to think about is the three big blocks, the circles of life. There is life externally, the way we understand it, the way we see it. It could be kids, career, financial responsibilities. It's what we want to do in the world. It's people, connections, and everything else. And then there is an internal world, which we're more aware of our mind and our mindset, our thoughts, our emotional wellness, our ideas on anxiety or depression or joy or love, things that we're relatively aware of, even though many of us still don't have like a full mastery of that. And then inside of our system, everything that we ever create, ever experience, ever can be, is that universe within, which is really the only temple for everything that you are, for your souls, for your dreams, for your love, for anything that you want to do in life. And so today we're going to flow in back and forth between the three so we can see and understand how those life systems and processes, whether it's the process of self-care, whatever that might be, we all have it, of self-growth, family relationships, any relationships, including work that come into our life, how we relate to career, business, how we show up in our performances, financial security, those will be the life systems, which have direct interaction with how much energy, performance, how much focus we can deliver to them, and how we respond to all of those challenges that they bring to our life. Then there's mind systems. That's our habitual responses, habitual thinking, habitual feelings. It's our rituals, whether, again, we recognize them or not. Boxes that we got put in when we become good girls at age 5 or 4 or 3, when you start becoming who you should be, the beliefs that we carry from society, from culture, from our families, often not recognizing that. And then how this affects our thoughts, our feelings, actions, and inactions, which is very important to start recognizing. How we relate to drive, to leadership, to gifts, talents that we recognize we have or not. And then we have the body systems. The body systems are not just compilation of organs. We'll invite you to think about them as systems that are responsible to producing energy. And they are engaged in different ways in the process of producing energy, of stabilizing and enhancing your performance, including your executive functions, your ability to work on the peak performance level, as well as decisions, whether it's decisions on the emotional level, or it's decisions about leadership, or it's decisions that we take about other people and ourselves. And so if we can kind of briefly go over those things just to map out the conversation, and then with that, leave it for Dr. West to take a lead into the deep dive. I would like us to think of the place, how do we generate energy? Through what we eat, through how we breathe, through how we move, obviously. What is the hormonal situation in our life? What's the immune system, how it functions? A really important piece of that conversation is stress response. And then our queen is the nervous system here, and how it interacts with the challenges we experience in the external and internal life that we bring ourselves or we experience. It's super important to also understand that there is a process of cleaning out toxins, the process of re-energizing the body when we sleep. And so we will be touching upon the sleep and how important that is to make sure that this waste machine is working properly and taking things out of your system. And overall, what happens with us, obviously, in the reproductive side of life, because women are going through a really interesting and complicated journey in life. And so each time, each phase of life brings its own challenges. And again, we're going to be connecting external and internal, so you can start thinking for yourself what happens externally and what happens internally, and shape up the new questions that Dr. West can then help us explore. Obviously, at the time of young childhood, we start becoming conforming to those boxes, to those roles that society and culture brings into our life. The self-awareness that can then carry us through lots of decisions through life, emotional, mental, habitual ways of relating to yourself. The young woman then obviously starts going through different hormones and puberty. There is sexuality, there is this independence, trying to find your place in space, which could be very stressful, which could be very taxing. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Deepak Sharma, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, about parenting and issues that come with in supporting your children in that journey. But then we start going into our own life of growth. When we start building career, we're making relationships happen, we work on our performance. And that's what becomes important, to know how to start shielding, boundarying, protecting our energy, so it goes to the place of focus attention instead of being spread out and wasting energy. We then go into life balance, when we get sandwiched, really truly sandwiched between having the elder parents, having children, being responsible for different management positions and people, having our responsibilities, all sorts of demands on our systems. And that's the place where some of us are starting to move into shifts in our woman's journey as well. And then there is a moment when we come into the place where we start questioning whether this misaligned way is working for us. When we get questions to ourselves about our physical, spiritual purpose, emotional needs and place to be. And then finally, we get to the place where we start bringing a new transformation for ourselves. We can reimagine our relationships. But unfortunately for many women, and we'll be talking about this in depth, it comes with that need to hide, because there's some shamefulness that comes up with the fact that we're aging and growing and changing in our systems and bodies. And so with these understandings of how your life, mental and internal systems collaborate, work, and signal to you, and putting this in the context of where you are in discussions in line of your journey, or if you have other women in your life who are going through different phases of life, if you can kind of have this matrix in the sessions, could have been done as an exercise. But keeping this in mind, we will now go into this deeper dive into few of those areas of life. So Dr. West, please take us through this amazing story of woman's journey.
Sure. Well, I think it's really remarkable. And, a woman's life journey has been something that has been recorded and measured in a lot of different ways. But since very early days, a woman's life has really been divided into cycles or stages. And the most common is the division into 3 cycles, which interestingly correlate very closely with one's menstrual cycle. So I don't think that, when we look back at ancient times and current times, it's no mistake that it really has stayed fairly constant through the years. The mythical division of the stages is Maiden, Mother, and Crone. And the Maiden really is the time from the first menstrual cycle until the first child is born. And it really is a time of growth and learning and development and testing and coming to understand yourself and coming to understand the world around you. And I think that it's good to take a look at some of the health issues that people have in these different stages as well. The next or middle stage would be considered that of the mother, and historically that has meant childbirth, from giving birth until the end of one's menstrual cycles. But now we know that that can be a little more loosely defined. It doesn't necessarily have to mean having a child and raising a child. And this period is really, it's a time of surrender and compassion and giving and recognizing that often one has to put, somebody else, a dependent of some sort or another, in front of yourself. And that can be the name of the game is balance during this time.
And I think if we frame this a little bit wider, it's not really a mother in the sense of having a biological child. It's that motherly feel of mentorship, of compassionate service to others. And unfortunately, we can see from statistics that during the COVID pandemic, women are disproportionately overwhelmed with the sudden caregiver situation, which leads them to very unfortunate decisions often about the career, or being stretched really, really thin. So when we think of mother, it's really the stage of your internal systems and the external demands for your leadership, right? And so it could be management, it could be caregiving.
And just to pick up on that reference to COVID, Olga, I don't know how many people realize, but in the United States alone, 22 million women dropped out of the workforce during COVID. And that was because of their other responsibilities, primarily, or their own health. So, and then the third stage of a woman's life cycle starts somewhere around age 50. And it's really that period of life when the reproductive years are finished, the hormone fluctuations of a monthly rhythm and cycle have faded. And there's really a new dimension to a woman's life. And in many ways, this is the time of life when women develop mastery. They come into their own. They really recognize the things that they care the most about. They're able to step into leadership roles and to do remarkable things in the world when they're putting their own passions and interests first. And it's also considered, the age of wisdom, and where, going to our elders has been an important time. Where, what you've learned through your journey can be passed on to others who need that information.
And I would love to have a little bit of a chat response here, just to understand who is the audience, who are you, how we can serve you more. If you could please put in the chat, do you feel that you are dealing with challenges that are Maiden, Mother, or Crone related? So we get a little bit more deeper dive into whatever is more responsive to your needs. And it's really not the time, the age specific. It's a little bit more the concept of your life, the context of your life, if you wish, and the internal context of where you are. Because, when I had 5 kids, I remember going through those tests that tell you your, what do you call it, biological age, which was really interesting. My 4th and 5th children were born when I was in my 40s, like 39, 41. But my biological screening was consistently showing 31. And so I was kind of curious to recognize that even in the scientific community, there is that feeling of vitality. And I'm not sure how you would call it, Dr. West, but there is this way to literally be different from what your biological passport age supposedly says. And I think in the world of us living longer and longer, we have a choice to live this life, 30 years in Alzheimer's and Parkinson and being immobile, or dancing to the day you die with the love of your life. And so it's the quality of life. It's this vitality that we want to kind of engage a little bit.
Absolutely. Age is really just a number when you come right down to it.
And you can control it, not maybe instantly, not with a magic pill, but if you have strategies, if you have proper support, if you have proper guidance, if you have accountability and you choose differently, you can reverse lots of things. Body is just an amazing self-healing miracle that is capable of doing lots of things if we allow it to do its job. And I do appreciate you sharing in the chat. And yes, it could be very emotional conversation because there's so much responsibility that we carry that it becomes the concept of guilt comes in place. There's always that feeling that you should do something else for someone first. There are lots of stigma. There's lots of uncomfortable moments, especially when we get to our feminine issues of whatever kind they might be. So please do feel free to share your concerns, share your ideas in the chat. We will address them, whether in our session today or afterwards, because it is important to recognize that whatever you're feeling is absolutely normal. Billions of people, women, go through this. Half of the planet is a woman. And the second half of the planet has a woman in their life, a mother, a spouse, a sister, a daughter, a friend, a colleague, a boss, anyone who will lead, anyone who leads us. So those conversations are important. And it's important to have them with yourself so you can take them to your daughters, so you can create the generation where stigmas are not locking us into the place of being alone. And sharing this will allow you to share, first of all, and then recognize that you are not alone. There's so many of us that experience exactly the same.
So the first phase that we have talked about is that of, early in life, from young, from puberty basically up until the time that one starts family. And that area of time is really features really striving to be at one's best, learning, growing, understanding, figuring it all out, helping to understand who you are and what you want to be in the world. And it's a very exciting time of life. And most people feel very invincible, and you come up against challenges and you figure out how to sort through them and really start to develop yourself as an individual. And there are definitely stressors in this time. There are lots of things that one has to consider. And we want to make sure that when you're looking at the whole picture, you come to a way to help to manage and balance stress. And because it does affect your overall well-being, your health, your mental health, your emotional well-being, and also how your body functions. So
there's some risks here, if I can just take it a little bit more into the life system conversation. So maidens for us would be probably our daughters or younger female colleagues coming into our teams. And what you, Dr. West, said, they really have this drive, they have this strive, thinking that they're literally invincible. And this is like a very high pressure, high achieving cultural component, because what I have seen in my daughters who are 25, 23, 21, the oldest ones, that they almost don't know how to take their foot off the accelerator pedal. Because if they do this, the rest of them keep going, and it just keeps pressuring them to somehow know what they need to do in life, somehow have the solutions, never stop. They really want the career success. They're looking for establishing themselves. And that can create that self-imposed stress that comes from this DNA of high achievers, as I call them, when we are so afraid to be left behind societally that we keep pushing ourselves. And what we often don't recognize is that we create this stress for ourselves. Sometimes we need a wiser person, a mentor like you, to tell them, stop, slow down, pause. It's okay. It's okay. You don't need to win every single flag in the universe. And I think that's a conversation when it's really, really important, because we don't have the doorbells yet of any symptoms, that we start breaking lots of things that then create problems when we want children, when we talk about fertility. So can we just talk about this? What happens at that time that we don't recognize, but we might show up later on? And most importantly, what can we here, the leaders, the mothers, can do to support them? So we create that compassionate culture of sustainable success, if you wish.
I'm so glad that you brought up mentorship, Olga, because there are lots of really good research studies that have clearly documented that women don't succeed in the workplace without the mentors, having mentors around. We all benefit from the wisdom of those who have been before us. And it's not just career-wise, it's also in terms of one's personal life or raising a family or whatever your hobby is that you care so deeply about. You know, they're really having somebody to share and commiserate and talk with and get guidance from is vital. So if you are in this maiden phase, I strongly urge you to have a look around, start thinking about people in terms of the mentorship that they can offer, and really take advantage of that, because for those of us who are a little farther along, I can promise you none of us would be where we are now without that mentorship. So
Nothing is done alone.
that's absolutely right. So,
and it doesn't need to be, because it's so much faster. It's so much easier because there's just support. There's accountability. There's so much more that can happen. And I think what is also very an interesting concept, I see Carla's question, how you get stuck in that maiden mentality almost, right, of high achiever, and they can stretch really far, racking more and more and more, because accelerator pedal has one problem. You might be a great driver, but sooner or later you're going to hit the wall, whether it's going to be marriage situation, affairs of some sort, burnout, some diagnosis. Sooner or later life is catching up with you, because we can't be stretching our systems without some form of rehealing, right? So what would be, and there's another important component too, again, because unfortunately we had to deal with those situations, the mental concept, the mental wellness of that maiden mentality. There's so much suicide happens around that time. There's so much addictive behavior or risky behavior that people are jumping in as the like what I call the knee-jerking reaction to stress, because stress basically disconnects the prefrontal cortex from making proper decisions, right? And we can just talk a little bit about those other riskier situations that we are, I would say, secretive, like dark secrets of success, I call them, that we experience. But even that is stigmatic. We're not talking about mental wellness of young people until it's too late. Or we have this component of like, hey, just get yourself together, stop being depressed, get yourself into action, don't be lazy, not recognizing that it actually could be not the laziness and not a decision, but a mental condition or a risky behavior that is not done by choice, but more like escape from. If we can just touch on that element.
mm-hmm. Yeah, the number one cause of death in this age group is accidental death. And what we find is that, you know, people are looking to relieve stress. They're looking to define themselves, to, you know, break free from things that might be bothering them. And that's where we start to see substance use, alcohol use, drug use. And those dull our senses, make it more challenging to be in control of a vehicle, less aware of our surroundings, more prone to being taken advantage of in many different ways, including physically. And those, it can be very detrimental to one's health, you know, from the standpoint of, you know, sexually transmitted infection or trauma. Really, people, I think, in this age group are a little more inclined to take substance abuse more lightly, and just have to remember that the downstream consequences can be really serious. So,
and the eating disorders have a huge play in that, because they really serve as an avoidance strategy psychologically that we don't recognize sometimes. And again, the conversation here, coming back to the question in the chat, don't think about this just age-wise. Think about this kind of the mindset-wise. We can get stuck in that maiden uncertainty and trying to drive ourselves to success for a very long time, way past 25, 26 years of age. So let's just think about this maiden world of trying to establish yourself or continuously relying on getting that recognition from external recognition. So you could be 47 and still have some of those behaviors going through you, right?
This is the time of life sometimes when familial medical issues will present themselves, and that can be in the form of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, it could be autoimmune disease, thyroid problems, migraines, which pass down through the family tree, unfortunately. Lots of other health issues which are important to address as they come up. And I think my takeaway from a medical standpoint for that time frame is really to just, pay attention to it, listen to your body when it talks to you, and seek out more information and help and assistance with understanding what's going on when things don't feel right.
Without waiting for a wall to hit.
Right.
Because the systems, the support systems around us, it's a decision we make. We can't decide that I'm alone, there's no one else in the world. But I'm just curious to just see how much you're not alone in the chat. If you could just put, how much more comfort would you feel if you knew that you're not alone with any of those issues? And there are support systems, there's coaching opportunities, Dr. West, wisdom, or something else, the mentorship that could help you. So we have 100%, huge help, 1000% once, 1000% twice, huge difference, because I'm always feel I am the only one a lot.
So common. Why is it that our brains start there and we have to remind ourselves that we have companionship? Yeah.
And it's a good thing to recognize that I feel that if I had that support, I would have been in a much better place. And what will become possible for you if you feel supported? I'm just, again, put in the chat. What do you think would become possible if you had that mother feel unconditionally supporting you, especially when you're not doing your best, because that's when we generally feel the most stressed and the least resourceful as a result of that. And we'll dive into this a bit. What would become possible if next to you would have been that system, that support? Very helpful.
Talk about that. Yeah. No, it's one of our missions is to get the word out about, menopause doesn't mean the ending, it's the beginning of many, many things, many good things to come.
And I really love the comments coming through that we really need to teach our girls, our daughters, but guess what? You need to start with self, because you can teach them whatever you want. And if it remains in the words and they see you not taking care of yourself, you allowing abuse that you yourself allow into your own time, space, and energy by not putting boundaries, but not having assertive communication, chances are the role modeling overtraps any words, because we all know what we should be doing and we're not doing this, right? So what I would love us to do, though, it's a little bit more specific. I love what Shraddha put in. It would be much more optimistic and much more confident. Can we get to that level of please get in touch, just feeling your neurosculpturing feedback from your body, from your somatic wisdom? What would become possible if you are supported? So optimistic and confident, what would that do in your life? Would
Cecile,
that lead?
I love that you've talked about calling it the Crone stage, and I completely agree with you. I debated whether that, but going back to classical texts, they do call it Crone, but really it is a goddess stage too on many fronts, and we'll talk about that.
And Crone is time, right? So it's like the goddess of time.
Cronus. Yeah.
Fantastic. So build strong support system when you have no family in the city you live in. The support system is always available. It's just the decision we make to start seeing it and then build and expand it. And that's the conversation we will have closer to, like in a bit later in this conversation. But what I want you to just kind of be aware of is if you allow yourself truly look inside and make a choice. I want to be alone, do it all by myself. Or I want to learn, I'm willing to learn to believe that I'm always supported. And just feel how your body responds to that. Just a touch of listening to your somatic wisdom. It feels better this way or better this way. That's when the alignment with your internal body wisdom starts happening. And that's what this whole concept of wellness that Dr. West is working on, that I'm as a coach working on, is all about having those dialogues within yourself with compassionate, kind, loving way. So you don't beat yourself into success, but instead flourish and blossom into it because you're using your all intelligence. It's not just your mental education. But let's just dive in and literally go into that mother place of giving and serving and being sandwiched sometimes by that, and then still surviving and being strong and resourceful. What happens in this stage of life, Dr. West?
Well, I think in this phase of life, what people quickly discover when they have a child is that they suddenly have a truly full-time job, and they're thrown headfirst in with that baby who does not come with a manual. And you really are, you spend at the beginning, you're searching for the right answers. You want to do things well. You're trying to understand the best way to do this. This is often the time for women when they actually come to appreciate their moms in a brand new way, because they are suddenly recognizing what their mothers went through when they had children. But it is a time of, challenges, because your time literally isn't your own. You are responsible for another being, and sometimes more than one, sometimes many more than one. And you can also at this, at 35 or 40, start to have an aging parent who needs your attention as well. And so it's really becomes you're compassionate, you're caring, your capacity to love deepens and strengthens. But at the same time, you're this constant balancing act between all that you know how to give and can give, and remembering to also give to yourself.
And if I can just add to this mosaic of responsibilities. So let's just talk about this. Obviously, mother and a child is clearly one way of connecting, but there's also a mother who wants to become mother, who had to make choices before to postpone this to later time. So there is that component of mother to be, right? So that's an important conversation. And then we sort of become mothers to our own family members. And some of us carry this responsibility from very young age. And some of us become these caregivers accidentally with no preparation. But we start taking care of them. I remember the time when I was pregnant with the fifth child and having 53 doctor's appointments, out of which there was 40 something were for my father and mother, who happened to have one trauma and a different surgery. And it was just like, when do you even put time for making money, for relationship, for forget yourself, as usually we put ourselves last. But the mothery concept also comes as we try to nurture our career. We understand that we don't put time into career, if we don't put effort in the career, long term, it will affect our leadership abilities. It will affect our progression at work. And for many of us who want to make an impact on the world, not just make money, this is a very important component, because you really want to be there with your heart to serve your mission to the universe. We're also becoming more engaged in community. Some of us are church leaders, some of us scouts leaders. We start leading children groups. So there's significantly more other children that take our resources as a mother. And then there is that component of kindness, I guess, that we need to bring in our relationship, intimate relationships too. We forget so many times. We see people who totally went into raising children, and then 20 years later, when children go to colleges, there's nothing left. The relationship is not there. There's just a co-mingling in raising the kids. So there is that nurturing needs component to so many different aspects of life, including ourselves. Because keep pouring water and then what's left? You can only pour so much until you become empty. So if we can just talk about this self-care a little bit more, maybe, and also what is that feminine piece of nourishing and being in that planning of this complex Rubik cube of life.
Yeah, and self-care can take a lot of different forms. Having time to be able to exercise, having time to really think about and prepare healthy food choices, working to get enough rest. The data on sleep now is coming thick and fast, where we're really truly understanding the value and importance of a good night's sleep. I don't know, Olga, if you remember when I was in college, it was sort of a badge of honor when you stayed up late and pulled an all-nighter. And, it's like, I remember friends who would brag that they survived on 4 hours of sleep a night and they were fine. When the reality is now that we know that that affects human physiology in a negative way.
And performance. That makes you pretty much an emotional resilience and ability to connect.
Emotional lability goes way up, and it's just harder to be efficient and effective in your day when you're tired all the time. So, yeah.
And so how would that pressures that we experience, that sandwiching experience we have, translate into what happens inside our body? So we still usually don't necessarily see lots of symptoms. So we still kind of don't get these ring bells from the body like, hey, we're in trouble. But there is something happening inside, and it's important to understand. And so we can preemptively, preventively, lovingly guide our energy and resources and performance and learn to start bringing the boundaries, because we're not the same as we were when we were 20. The systems keep maturing, right?
Well, it's important to recognize that long-term chronic stress has a lot of negative effects on the body. The principal one being the constant flood of cortisol into the system, which overrides a lot of the natural systems balances that are put in place. So it's a time where people might eat more. There's an issue with weight gain because lack of sleep and stress eating can influence weight. And then that leads to a whole list of additional concerns health-wise. So we often will see more problems arise as the stress continues. And we're recognizing now chronic inflammation as a problematic component of a person's life. And we have ways now to measure. There are actually markers of chronic inflammation that can be checked at a yearly exam to try to understand, how much stress am I really under? How is it that this number is high? What is it that's leading to that number? And as the numbers climb, so does the risk for diabetes and heart disease and autoimmune problems and other issues. So it's, it has a negative impact throughout the system, and it has to do a lot with not enough rest and not enough nutritional balance.
And so if we really think about this, I often like to bring this very, very simple concept. Bank account. If you keep withdrawing money from your bank account and keep giving it to everyone else, not asking why they need your time, why they need your energy, right? But you keep giving money out. Eventually, your bank account will bankrupt unless there's something coming in. And so our energy, our body is sort of similar to some extent to this, right? We keep giving things out on tasks that are not necessarily even aligned to what we really need or want, not listening to the body when it needs to rest instead of dumping coffee into this so it can run again. And It is all those taxing our systems. But if we do not necessarily have a strategic way of also putting things in when the system requires that refueling, we will also bankrupt it sooner or later. And so that's the place where the stress is basically a nervous response. It's like nervous system communicating with the universe, telling you how it feels. So it's kind of that constant back and forth communication system. But it's important to understand that it's your decision to allow people into your time. You can learn to say no. You can be willing to say no and find a different way. We'll be talking about this tomorrow, by the way. If you want to join us for that do, delete, delegate matrix that allows us to have the system and strategy to eventually learn and be willing to put those boundaries around energy and time and space around yourself. But it's a decision. If you're willing to start recognizing that there may be a different way. The statistics show that 77% of people feel stressed, anxiety, overwhelmed, or in an anxiety mode. But guess what? The magic is that 23% are not living in exactly the same environment as we all in the same pandemic. And the question is, what do they do? So I can learn to do that too. So I can become the 24th percentage and 25th and 27th and take people that I love and lead into that space as well. And it's not easy. It's lots of saying no to people. Boundaries are not easy to establish. They're not easy to maintain. But you do need to become aware that it's your decision. It's your time, your life, your energy, your decision. And I'm just curious, again, in the chat, if we can have a very quick poll. How do you feel your self-care is right now? 1 being non-existent, like poor, and 10 will be amazing. I'm totally loving myself and doing everything for myself. Where would you be in that self-love, self-care routine as you feel it? 1, doesn't exist. 10, brilliant. So we have 4, 6, 8, 9, 6. 8, 5, 4, 5. So we have pretty solid mid-range, which is fantastic. Sometimes we get people critically not taking care of ourselves. But I'm curious, what would be the emotions that comes in when you start thinking me first life structure? What's the emotion that prevents you from doing more for yourself? And I know the answer, and you will see the answer. It's going to be amazing to see this answer, because that's a conversation we could have again, and we'll talk about this tomorrow in the workshop. Come and join. But notice, it's a guilt of being selfish. Oh, I love that. So let me ask you, if you give yourself to everyone else, being stressed out, jerky, emotionally unfit, performance-wise, I don't know, executive functions, forget my memory, not being able to focus anymore, right? Because that's what stress does to us. Kind of like a C- self to them. Is that selfish or unselfish? To give the worst version of yourself and preventing them from having the A+ version of yourself, joyful, rested, fully focused, fully happy for them, totally engaged, open, committed. So which side of that is more selfish? The C- self, because that's what they deserve, or A+ self given to them because that's what they deserve? The desire of being liked by people around us get us to stretch ourselves. But there is a possibility to see it, that because of this desire to stretch yourself, you're giving yourself not your best self to them. The liking will happen much more when you come in the best, brilliant, bold, and beautiful self that you've been created, when you're rested, when you're resourceful, when you're emotionally connected, when you're engaged. And again, it's a decision. I am stressed. Thus, I'm C minus. In the best interest of those people I love, for me right now is to take a rest. Because that would be selfish to continue giving myself because I'm already not my best optimal self for them. That's a decision. And because I'm not best right now, I'm jerky, I'm jumping on, I'm not patient, I can't be patient, I'm like angry right now, I feel guilty. I cannot be my best self. The best thing for them right now is for me to go into my world and replenish myself. So I can come back 30 minutes later being much more myself and give them the A+ version of what they deserve. How does this land? I'm curious. If it resonates with you, doesn't resonate with you, what comes up? It's a way of thinking. True by heart. Yeah, I didn't say it will be easy because you're going against 40+ years of very much habitual mental frameworks that, by the way, were installed to you by someone else who told you that you, as a woman, a girl, should do this. And we should over ourselves all the time. That's why guilt is the first and only emotion that immediately jumps in. Because guilt means that someone told us that we should be something else. And we have a choice to listen to the body that says, nah, I'm stretched. I'm depleted. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed. I'm not able to be my best self. For the 20 minutes, I'm taking a break for me so I can be the best I can for them. That's what they deserve. It will be hard initially. That's where you need the support. That's why I need to work with Dr. West. That's why you need coaching. That, by the way, is also part of that wellness system, right? There's nutrition coaching, life coaching, wellness coaching. There's so much that is possible to shift your belief and stay through when it's hard. It will be hard. But what will become possible when you become the best self in your relationship? Best performance in your career, best performance in leadership.
I think one big lesson for me was that self-care doesn't have to take a long time. You know, taking 15 minutes out and doing, you can do a 10 or 15 minute yoga session when you get home from work. And even 10 minutes can change your level of calmness and your flexibility and your feeling more at ease and relaxed in the world. And another thing that many people talk about over time is the benefits of some meditation. For some, it takes the form of a prayer. For other, it's, just reflective time, but it's a time where you're really just stopping and putting the world around you on hold and just kind of thinking a little inward for a change. And often I think people's best ideas come when they have a little bit of time just to relax and think.
And not just to show how simple that could be, energy wise, like willing guys to just get your cameras up. I just want to show you a very, very super simple seconds, literally, to change your energy right now. So put in the chat, please, what do you feel your energy level right now is? Anything like 1 is, and 10 being like, I'm excited, I'm happy. I'm happy. 10, I'm blah. 1. Just get the number. It doesn't need to be overthinking. It's just like a number so you can see how easy 15 seconds later you will shift. Okay, 4, 2, 3, 4, 3. Gosh, we get you into very depressing conversation. 5, pushing up to 4. Okay, what I would like you us to do. Get up, people, get up, get up, get up, and get your camera on so we can see each other. Just for a second, play, let's play. Come on, get cameras on so I can see you. I actually will stop sharing so I can see you. Okay, awesome. We have a few people ready to go. Okay, I want you to laugh. It's a form of breathing exercise. I explain the logic and neurology later on, but let's just laugh. You take a deep breath with your diaphragm, and then you laugh hysterically. I want to show you 15 seconds of joy flowing into. Please unmute. Awesome. Ready to go? Like you can't stop because it's really like you want to go. Yeah. So tell me now, what is your feeling of your energy, of your emotions in the chat? More relaxed, race. Okay, let's go with numbers. You had 5s, you had 6, you had 3s. Look, 6, 8, better. Smiley face, happy. 8. We had 3, 4, 5s. We still have some 5s, okay, but maybe it was 3 before. Did you go up or down? Or did you stay the same? Same, up, down. Put in the chat. Up, 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 up. You got the feeling. So what did we do? We spent 15 seconds calming the most important nerve in our system. Dr. West, which one is that?
Are you thinking about the vagus nerve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we use the vagus nerves go all the way through, right? From the back of your scalp all the way to the back of yourself. And it's going through your heart, your lungs, your diaphragm, and everything else. What we just did, we did a nice, loving massage to our own body through a very sophisticated exercise called laughing. But it's an expansion of diaphragm. It's contraction, like it's contraction, right? It stretches your muscles, which is 33 muscles are engaged in a smile. When you do this for 15 minutes alone, not even feeling great, and if you don't feel like smiling, take your pen, stretching those muscles, releases the neurosculpture of your body. It recognizes, no, wait a second. We seem to be doing things that I associate with happy. We seem to be smiling. I associate this with this cocktail of neurons and hormones, and it releases it. And that's like 15 seconds. Do you feel better?
Yes.
Awesome. How long did it take you?
10
10 seconds.
10
Can you do
seconds.
this again?
Yes.
Yes. Awareness. The mind is resisting, right? Because we're so into this wisdom that we're not yet as skilled in connecting to emotional wisdom, intelligence of our body, and the spiritual intelligence of energy around us. So that's perfectly fine. That's how we can connect to body. That's what I call the communication, the dialogue with the body. And that's where you start feeling like fertility issues, infertility issues. There's kindness in that. And so Dr. West, if you just like get us into that fertility component and how we move out of childbirthing age, and what's that moment that we get into that, ew, I don't want to be old. I need to be this to be woman, and what will happen if I stop being that? And it's just, what is that moment of our life?
Well, I think that transition into the third phase is, it happens at various times, and it's a long process. It's not something that you just wake up the next day and the change has happened. It's, you know, it can take a number of years to go through perimenopause into full-on menopause. And yes, our hormones are changing. I mean, you know, it's what I love about endocrinology, and we really do feel like hormones run our lives in so many ways. But the there is it's a gradual transition, and it's learning to cope and understand what some of the physiologic changes are, and learning how to work with those physiologic changes. But you know, a big piece of it, I think, on the emotional front is when the kids are out of the house, or when the ill parent passes away. But you really are, you begin to have the time and space in your life to start to focus on other things. And that's really, you can go back to the interests that you've always had, the things that you love, your favorite hobbies, whether it's singing or artwork or whatever it is that you love to do, dance, so many different things, getting involved in activism, whatever it might be that you've been sort of putting on the back burner, making a big travel plan, whatever it might be, that it just, it takes some time. And it is important to remember that, you know, taking good care of yourself through that transition is really important, but also, like people have brought up in the chat, this is a time that we all know about, but maybe we don't know very much. It's not something that's really commonly discussed. And one of our missions with the Miss Medicine practices is to help people understand that we really need to get people started on this conversation. This is something that every man, woman, and child should understand. Of course, I've felt that way about a lot of women's health issues forever. And I think the younger generations are starting to grab onto this more. If anyone has a teenager, you just listen to how they talk to one another about what a menstrual period is and what it's all about and how you deal with it. It's just much more open, much more on the surface than it had been. And I think that's really, really terrific. And now we need to do the same thing with menopause. And actually, I will put a reference out for you for those of you who are approaching this time. First of all, there's the North American Menopause Society has a really terrific website with a lot of fantastic information on it about menopause and about the physiologic changes in menopause. But there's also a really great podcast out there by my OBGYN colleague at Yale, Dr. Minkin, and it's called Menopause Unmuted. And it's a great storyline. What she does is she goes in and she basically interviews someone who's going through menopause in each short episode. And she'll interject with some of the medical components of what the person is experiencing. And you learn all sorts of things about what to expect if you're not there yet, or how to attribute some of the symptoms you may have been experiencing to menopause. And yes, she does talk about perimenopause as well. She approaches it from all angles, and she emphasizes the importance of making sure that the people who live in your house with you understand what's happening, because it's so vital for your relationships. So
that's kind of very interesting. We have 4 girls, well, I include myself into that, who are in that woman's place. And then we have 1 growing into that and a boy. So 6, so mom and 5 children, right? But here's the deal. There's 4 of us. We balance out the cycle, because that's what happens very often. It's observed in studies in sociology that women will kind of somehow balance out their cycle. And so you get into this emotional discussion sometimes with a husband or whatever about something, politics. And then the moment comes in, which is like, gosh, why I'm so angry? Why is this happening? Why we just have this conversation? Until it's like, no, wait a second, let's just check the dates. And we open it up, and it's like instantly you translate into, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. It's you and me being in the moment. And suddenly the compassion comes back. The understanding comes back. The husband's like, slow down. The boyfriend's calm down. Everyone is at peace, because this is what it is. It is life. It is the moon phase. It's the beautiful place of parting with something that didn't happen, didn't come to life this time, but you immediately fall into that place of, it's not, nothing's wrong with me. It's not my identity anymore. It's just, we need space and breathing and time. And it's so interesting to see this dynamic literally like that to change, because the mindset shifts into, oh, that's it. That's a week prior. Fine. But what's important also to understand that you said it's a long process. It's 7 to 15 years. And it's not like one day you wake up and there's no more menses. It's on and off, and sometimes too much, and then it's confusing, and then it's not clear, and you don't know if it's pregnancy, if it's not pregnancy, and there's like all sorts of such a frustration that comes way before you recognize even that that's the process. So if we can just speak a little bit about that, like how do we get it, especially for those of us who postponed having children until 40s, and then get confused about the body, the messages, where the stress comes in, where's the body really comes in, and what can be done, how it can be supportive to the body so it can do what we want it to do.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty safe to assume for most women that by about age 44, 45, sometimes 46, you're not really having ovulatory cycles anymore. You're not spitting out an egg that can be fertilized on a regular basis to induce pregnancy. And what happens is that the hormone levels sort of steadily drop during this time. And the three main sex hormones that we pay attention to are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And estrogen, all three are produced, estrogen and progesterone are produced mostly from the ovary. Testosterone is produced partly by the ovary and partly by the adrenal glands. So testosterone levels kind of do a steady, slow fall over time. So a normal testosterone level in a 25-year-old down to the normal testosterone level of a 50. The 50-year-old is probably at about half as much testosterone. And estrogen and progesterone start to go up and down and up and down and up and down until they just peter out. And that is the symptoms that you experience are often when that fluctuation is taking place. So, and that, estrogen withdrawal has a lot of different symptoms associated with it. There's moodiness, mood changes, depression, there's poor sleep. The quality of a person's sleep as progesterone goes down gets worse and worse. The hot flashes that everybody so famously talks about and hears about. And then some of the other ones, as far as sexuality, your drive for sex really falls. And also the comfort level of sex changes because of vaginal dryness and a condition called Genital Urinary syndrome of menopause, where the tissues in that part of the body literally change, and it can make intercourse really uncomfortable. And so that has a lot of far-reaching implications for yourself and also for your relationships. So these are all things that it's good to be aware and learn about and understand. And then also to understand that we do have treatment strategies that help. And you could break it down item by item. For some women, the right answer is actually to continue a low dose of hormones for a little while longer. That can really improve overall well-being and functioning for quite a little while longer. Then you have, for women for whom that's not a good option based on specific risk factors like a history of blood clots or a strong family history of breast cancer, then there are other options available. But the one thing that has really come to the forefront in the last couple of years is that genital urinary syndrome of menopause should be treated for pretty much every woman over the age of 50 ought to be considering treatment for this condition because it's so easy to fix and it's virtually harmless with the treatments that we have available. And that's new information. We've finally come to understand that we don't need to be afraid of a little bit of topical hormone creams to improve those conditions. So
then we're still in that place where stressor is a really big deal, because think of that, at age 45, we are still in the midst of raising children. Some of them just starting out, some of them having 3, 4, 5 children and really being stretched. On top of that come our parents. They're kind of getting to the place of 70, 80. That's when bad things happen to good people. And we are stretched probably by managerial positions, which dealing with people and not task anymore is additional whole load of emotional fitness. And on top of that, we are still probably in some relationship that may kind of go south or may not be happening. There's like general pressures that we call general stress, and anxiety is also very present at the same time. And so this is where the place and time when the support is so needed, because there's some simple life changes. And before, sleeping 7 hours was like a choice. It becomes a necessity when you get to this place where you need to have your resources enhanced, right, to the maximum capacity possible. If eating properly was kind of a choice before, it becomes a necessity now, because that is how you get nutrition or less toxins. It depends on how you make your choices. And that gives your ability, your body, to go with the flow, get these deposits, or consistently have the withdrawals and go bankrupt sooner than later, right? There's so much more opportunities that we also go against the habitual behaviors that we establish in 30, 40 years. And so it's hard to do by yourself until we get the big wake-up call. And it's time to start thinking that maybe there's a different way. Maybe there is a different wellness concept where you come first, then come others, then comes the world. And that is like a life wellness concept, not sickness. When we're in sickness, that's already too late. So enhancing our life and respecting the beauty this life brings to the world, the spring in life and creation that we all carry within us. And so we talked about that overall concept of the body, mind, and life. And I hope you start thinking in these components of constant dialogue. And there is sometimes a place where some of them need to have more attention. It's not either or, it's both and. And sometimes your mind needs more attention. And other times your body feels like it needs more love and attention. The point here is to be in this constant dialogue. It's not just what happens here. It's also the quality of it, the inspirations, the creativity, innovations, ability to build different relationships. And all of this is such an amazing opportunity to translate, not just for yourself, but also to impact we have on people who look after us. And just to kind of bring us a bit closer to performance, I know it's hard to say, like, we're high achievers, we don't have time for all this body nonsense, right? What I would like us to kind of look into some statistics, which comes from Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and all sorts of very smart people, very patriarchal in their mentality, even if they're run by women, right? Kind of very go, 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 do, do, do. But I want us to kind of stay in that conversation a little bit longer, just in that context of leadership, management, career, work in us women. Menopause affects all of it. You being cranky, yelling at your employees or kids or teens is an effect, right? It's 50% of population women doing something and 50% have to deal with women. So it really affects everyone. And millions of women will experience significant menopause symptoms, which affect focus, attention, memory, emotions, ability to move, energy. Like we can talk about this, but think of that. The average CEO is 53 years old and the menopause is 45, 55. So just like when we are thinking about how we're going to now transform the world, we hit one of the most incredible train in our life that just kind of like goes into your head, into your energy, into your emotions. Think of the statistics. 25% only, and that's expansion from what we've seen in the 2018 was 21%. Our C-suite positions are women because they often can't quite sustain that pressure, or they don't even go into this. Not to mention that a lot of formative career years are spent in childbearing and carrying, and therefore not as present. There's stigmas, forget the ageism, which is one stigma on its own. But think of that. Can you possibly hide that you're pregnant and say, well, you know what? Oh, I forgot to, I don't know, bring this presentation or send this presentation, but I'm pregnant. And everyone will go, ha ha, generally. Most of them will. But can you imagine saying that, oh, I forgot to send the presentation because I had 5 hot flashes, or I just have memory loss because I'm not menstruated for the last 3 years. How impossible that is, right? In so many ways. And so you will hide, you will pretend, you will come around. There's some emotions that will come around that we will try to hide it. That's what stigmas is all about. And then no menopausal symptoms, as far as I know, are covered by any of the public corporate health policies. Even pregnancy finally gets its way in. But where did you see that? Even though it affects, as I said, 50% of population. And yet, every 1 of 4 women will have not just some, but serious symptoms, as statistics shows. And so the feeling that we have of embarrassment and extra stress, what if they find out, and anxiety and worry, what will happen if, the confusion that comes with our body, the hiding, the frustration, the energy drop, and so much energy going into all of this thinking, the relationship that suffer from not necessarily feeling sexual or hiding or emotionally reactive, the performance, the overall culture, how we communicate to ourselves, to our spouses, to people around about those issues, and inviting us to start thinking about it differently. What is the dialogue that we can have? This is the beginning of it. Dr. West practice has this dialogue all the time. There are people, we were bringing one psychologist to talk about sex and boardroom and bedroom, which will be a very fun thing, because it's not about just fun, it's about life. And these conversations are important. We can think of accommodating schedules and strategies, like asking for flexible work schedules, working from home, which we'll now do. But there is a possibility to start advocating for yourself or be more responsible when people ask for it. You're not stuck with decisions about what you are is in the body that you have. So how do we advocate for this body? If it would have been our child, we'll find a way to find a different communication around this issue. And then finally, communicating, be open about this. Like, it's vulnerable, but it starts with us. It's a decision. And if every single one of us makes this decision, well, the world will start changing. Like 100 years ago, no one expected flossing and brushing teeth, right? And people had no teeth, rotted mouth smell. Now it's not the normal. The normal is beautiful smile, because something started happening and then it became the new norm and new culture. And so just a simple thing, like, you know what? You can excuse yourself when you go pee in the meeting. You say, sorry, need to use the bathroom, right? Can you do that? Like, say yes in the chat if you've done this before. If you ever excuse yourself because you need to have a bio break. So that is possible because the body is important, right? So what if you say, have to excuse myself in the boardroom for a few minutes, I'm having a flash and I need a break. Could you do that? Yes? No? Yes or no? No. Okay. And what if you decide that, yes, I can? It's absolutely no different from peeing, pooping, throwing up, and whatever else body wants to do. Body has the right to be, because its job is to keep you alive, and it's doing this phenomenally. So where's the respect back to our body? Right? And it's a decision. What if you next time you say, I'll have to excuse myself, I'm having a hot flash and I need a break. What do you think will happen? Will they fire you? Yes? No? Will they laugh at you? Like, what would they do? The worst case scenario, what would they do? Nothing. They may ridicule us. Well, talk about you. Is that what you think will happen? Or is it like your imagination that this might happen? So that's a question that you can start asking yourself. And that's what I hear in my girls being 25. They say, no, I can't. I have my menses. We'll have to go out another day. They can say it. And the boys listen to this and they're like, oh, okay, fine. Or I'm really feel righty today because I have my menses, and the boyfriends and the friends get it. They discuss this. It's a decision. It's a decision. And it's a decision that make an impact. And the decision is to talk to Dr. West, find support, talk to other people who can, like, it's a decision to change the world that starts with us. And we can feel more powerful, much more self-assured, respected and valued, because the option of being ridiculed and hiding is just not the option that I want for myself or for my girls. And so if you guys want to have this conversation, go deeper. We're leaving you with contact information. There are tons of resources in Dr. West's website, blogs, etc. And if you have questions, please go ahead and mute yourself. Happy to answer any questions you may have, and or follow up with them after.
Well, I have a primary care internal medicine women's health practice, and it's a membership-based practice. So you pay an annual fee for the year, and you get all of your care without additional billing involved. I would love to talk with any and all of you who might be interested or looking for this kind of care from your primary care physician. And also, I just want to mention that I also do women's health consultations. If you just have that specific subject that you want to address, as far as, you know, a menopause consult or anything, you know, a specific topic, I'm happy to work with people just on that as well. So.
We also ask you to click on the link, and you have a way to submit questions to Dr. West through this link as well. So that's another way to get in touch and follow up on this conversation. Really appreciate, Dr. West, you coming, spending time with us. I know how valuable your time is, and it's really was a great conversation to have. I hope we crossed the lines and broke some stigmas and broke some frameworks and ignited your imagination that things are possible different way. And we are these change makers. We start with self, we impact people who look up to us, whether it's children, daughters, or people we lead and love. And then that's how we make the change in the universe. But we need to learn to be one with yourself, the integrated self, the multiple pieces of you, and it's you inside anyway. So really appreciate, Dr. West, you coming. Really appreciate everyone to participating. Tomorrow we'll shift gears and go into talking about being a parent and a mother with children. So if you're struggling with this idea how to multitask, whether it's management, team members, or children, to me, that's the same thing. Seriously, when I worked in leadership and I worked with kids, the more you leverage your seemingly different knowledges into one, and you learn to speak to your body as if it's your spouse, to your mind as if it's a close friend, you know, to your teams as if they're children, and to children as if they're teams, the miraculous transformation happens. So, and any closing remarks, Dr. West?
Oh, just to say thank you so much for having me. And it's really a pleasure to meet all of you. I hope that wherever you are, scattered across the world, that you have a great day today. And, you know, if there's ever anything I can do for you, just let me know. I'm happy to help. Wonderful series. I would love to attend some of the next ones that you have listed, Olga. Yeah.
Because these conversations are needed. We talked about leadership, we talked about parenting, we're talking about sex, we're talking about frustrations and boundaries and saying no, and everything that we are, the marvelous, amazing goddesses of life and creation. And it's time that we stop being squeezed into boxes. They're just too small for our brilliance and boldness. And that's how we should be. And yes, you can. You can have 5 kids, you can have a business, you can have a career, you can do it all. Just believe in yourself and stay true to your own leadership.
A challenge to people to just, for one other person this week, why don't you start a conversation with somebody, anybody, about one way that hormones influence your life, and see if you can get that conversation. We really want to, you know, take the top off this sensation that it all has to be hidden and disguised and not mentioned, because it's not okay to have, you know, fluctuations in our hormones. It's going to impact who we are as humans, when in fact it actually enhances who we are and makes us better at what we do.
I'm definitely going to take it on.
I'd love to hear about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.